Hello, everyone. I'm Frederik Otto, the co-lead of the Global Workforce Strategy and Global Head of Client ESG and Impact. And I'm here today with Michael McCarthy, and we are talking about the DE&I solution universe of Pontoon Instinct. Great to see you, Michael. How are you?
I'm fine, Freddie. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Thank you. Last time we did this, we talked about systemic impacts of DE&I and how organizations can engage with students and young people at an early age onwards to build the workforce of the future. In this episode, we want to focus a little bit more on transformation of hiring processes and onboarding logistics, if you will. You are an expert in that area, obviously, so why don't we get started with a quick introduction?
Sure. Well, I've been with the firm for 8 years now, primarily working with our clients as they problem solve around areas of candidate attraction. So I'm often where a lot of DE&I conversations begin because I tend to the beginning of the recruitment process. So a lot of times this manifests itself when someone says, Michael, how do I hire more female engineers? If only I had more women applying to this role, I could achieve, the kind of the composition I'm looking for strategically. And so that's usually the opportunity for us to really dive into, well, what is it we actually have to do through the entirety of the process to achieve this goal, because it's not as simple as simply attracting more women.
So you are very much the architect for us internally behind the resourcing strategy, but you are really urging people not to think about how can I get more candidates that are women or more candidates with diverse backgrounds, but really to take a step back and look at what can you actually do with the top of the funnel applicants that you have at the moment, right?
Right. Not only that, but also who's already in the organization. What could we do from an upskilling, reskilling perspective? So when you think of things that way, you see that a lot of companies have plenty of women. They're just in the wrong chairs, right? So how can you create sort of those internal pathways of mobility that can also help you achieve that kind of composition you're looking for. When I say composition, of course, I'm talking about what is the demographic makeup of a given department, right? And what we find is that companies we work with, women might be plenty well represented in HR, maybe not so much in capital sales, maybe not so much in R&D, but the women are there. If you think about it, the old saying like that culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? But people who are a part of your culture, are part of the mission and believe in the big why as to what we are doing at work, those are people who I think more employers should think about upskilling into the roles where they would like to see more representation.
One example that you've given to me that could vastly improve actually attracting women without changing out any recruitment methodologies per se was just slimming down job descriptions to the bare minimum, because women tend to self-select themselves out if they feel that they don't tick all of the boxes on the job description. That's really something that stuck with me. I've never thought of it that way. Did I get that right? And what other sort of levers are there that can be pulled from a technical perspective?
Right. I mean, well, there's a lot of research that shows that phenomenon, which is to say that the more requirements you list, the less likely a woman might be willing to apply. And there's a whole range of interpretations as for why that is. So, and this is kind of an opportunity to also explore how we can be unwittingly tone deaf, because I've heard people say, well, men are bigger risk takers, and they might evidence driving habits, automobiles, to kind of support that argument. But I think that that's risky, and it in the sense that it really feeds into these kind of antiquated gender roles. You could also say women take the hiring process more seriously earlier. Is one more true than the other? I guess we can debate over a beer or something sometime. But the data is unimpeachable in the sense that the more requirements you have, the less likely women applicants you will have as a result. So the way to address that is to really embrace something that's an overarching best practice, not just in service of a DE&I goal, but that is really boiling a job description down to wants and needs in a clear, unambiguous manner that invites people into a process where you can discover more about them.
To end this session, what are the key behavioral changes that leaders have to think about and potentially have to, transform?
I mean, if I were a leader, I would pay very close attention to who's in the room with me, right when we close the door. And so when you think about representation, that has to include the C-suite.
Michael, we're at time here. Thanks so much for coming on today. Really interesting, and we'll continue this conversation at some point.
Well, thank you, Freddie. It's always a delight to talk to you.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.